Hi, Anne. I have a quick question for you. How many kids in the US do you think are homeschooled right now?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I would guess like a lot because I know it's gotten more popular. So
Mm.
maybe like, I don't know, a million people?
It's actually 3.4 million.
What?
That's at least, yeah, right? That's according to
What?
the National Home Education Research Institute. So there's an institute that studies these things about homeschooling. The estimate for this year, it's roughly double what it was before the pandemic, which, as we
Wow.
know, was only like 6 years ago. So, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's just homeschooling. So if you add in the families that are choosing online school on top of that, you've got a huge number of parents who are actively choosing something other than that traditional high school experience.
So then today's really a practical episode, right? I mean, if the
Yeah.
family's already decided that a traditional path just like isn't working, school down the street is not an option, which of these two do they actually pick?
Right. So today we're going to compare these two alternatives and see what each one actually offers, what problems there might be with each one. And we'll talk at the end about what we've built to kind of sit in between the homeschool and the online school. And once you've seen both of those and see where we sit in between, then you can have more information to make your options clear. I'm Beth Callaghan, and I've got Anne back with me again. And this is High School Wasn't Built for Every Kid.
It's great to be back.
Yay, and we'll be seeing more of you, I'm sure, throughout this whole season. So last time we answered the college question. So today we're stepping back to something that families usually hit earlier, which is once you know that traditional school is not working for your kid, then what do you do? And the two kind of main options I think that parents land on are either online school or homeschool. Those are like usually the ones that are most obvious. So we're going to actually compare the two of those today.
Which is great because I think maybe, like, people get a little confused too. I mean, are they the same thing? Are they different? Like, what is this all about?
Exactly, exactly. Online school, I think, is much more recent than, homeschool that's been around for a while. So, what exactly are the differences, and like, what even is this online school thing? So that's what we're going to start with is online school because we've talked about online school in a couple past episodes and have not maybe really given it its due because it does do some things well.
Well, like, what problem is it actually solving for a family?
Right. So for online school, it can really help families in like a rural area where there's not a lot of public school options, or if it's like a really long distance to travel to a public school. A kid managing a health condition where maybe they have accommodations that the public school or private schools around them can't really accommodate. A competitive athlete or a performer who can't be like in a building from 8 to 3. For those kinds of students, online school is really a good option because it allows them to finish high school, when in other circumstances, maybe they wouldn't even finish high school at all. So it also gives kids who are not able to really conform to that, very rigid structure of a traditional school, like in a specific classroom, or maybe if there's a specific social environment that is not
Mhm,
healthy for the kid,
mhm.
it can allow those kids to have a similar path with like kind of the structure of a school day and a real teacher, and also like a diploma that looks very similar to a traditional high school diploma. So, those things can be helpful for those kinds of kids.
Yeah, right, and I think, we're at a point where there's actual scale behind all of this at this point, like you're saying, this is not necessarily super new. I mean, yeah, maybe it
Yeah.
expanded during the pandemic, but, the Florida Virtual School, for example, is the largest state virtual school in the country. It's been around for, like, 25 years, fully accredited, tuition free for Florida residents, and they have over 200 courses, so it's the big state high school option if you can't physically be in a school.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the sort of private charter online schools, there's a company called Stride that is behind a lot of these K through 12 schools, and they've served more than 3 million students across all their
Wow.
programs. Connections Academy is, one that runs public online charter schools in a lot of states too, so it's not really, even though it's sort of maybe newer than homeschooling, it's not really like a niche option anymore. It's a well-resourced system that a lot of families rely on successfully, that their kids do really well in them.
Well, that's great, and, it's great that it works for some people, but like any of these, right? Like, where does it fall short? Where are the
Yeah.
parts that don't really necessarily work?
Right, so it's good for a particular student, but most of these programs is it's sort of like, taking the traditional high school program and just moving it virtually. So the schedule is usually still fixed, the, curriculum is still fixed, it's the same content, same pacing, it's just delivered online instead of, like, in person in a classroom. So the things that make traditional school hard for some kids, like the pacing that is set, right towards down the middle,
Yeah.
not a lot of a lot of choice, that stuff usually is not gonna change if you go to an online school. So, like, just as an example, at the Florida virtual school, students go through reading materials and complete online assignments, and they have to, in order to meet the, like, admission, or, sorry, attendance requirements, they have to turn in these assignments every week on a certain pace, so that pace does not change. Everybody's doing the same stuff, like, and that packet that you get, you read this stuff and now you do an assignment on it, that doesn't change depending on the kid.
Mm.
It's like every kid's reading the same thing and doing the same assignments. So that stuff, if that's what your child is struggling with, the online option is maybe not going to be a good option.
So, like, the delivery changes because it's online, but the actual instructional design underneath it doesn't change with it, and it doesn't adjust to students.
Exactly, it doesn't adjust to them. Some programs are further along than others in terms of, like, adapting and kind of, being a little bit more progressive, but it's really like online school doesn't tell you, it might seem like it's kind of innovative and everything, but it does just online school label does not necessarily tell you whether or not the school is a significant change from the traditional structure of what high school
Mhm.
looks like.
Well, it might even be a little more isolating too if
Yeah,
kids are doing
absolutely.
this on their own. So then, how is a parent supposed to tell the difference from the outside, right? If, all of these programs and all of these different, modalities and all that, like they all sort of market themselves and label themselves as personalized. What's a parent supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly, because of the way that they're all marketed and, there's always, like, that sort of marketing sheen over everything. The one thing I think, if your kid struggles with that kind of, traditional rigid structure of, you have to go at this pace, and if you're going faster than that, too bad. If you need to go slower, too bad. If that's an issue, then one thing a parent can do is kind of ask about whether or not there is this adjustment for a student's pacing. So, is everyone moving through the same units on the same calendar, just like a traditional school? Or is there some kind of, like, adaptive pacing for students who might
Mm.
want more or who might need a little bit more extra support? So, as I mentioned, the Florida virtual school, everybody's doing the same thing and turning it in on the same schedule, just like a regular school. So if everyone's reading the same material at the same pace, there isn't really a personalized adjustment in the instruction. And granted, at the Florida virtual school, there are teachers available. Students can, hop in. There are some live class sessions so they can ask for extra help, but that's really like not that different from a regular school where you could go, see your teacher
Yeah.
after school or like ask for personal instruction. So it's really not baked in to the structure of the program. So, if I had to sum up who online school really fits well, it's the kid who's already got like the self-direction piece in place and they can sit down with material, get through it without someone standing over them. And they are fine with kind of the pace that curriculum traditionally moves at. So what they need is maybe like flexibility, not like a different way of learning. They just need like, oh, maybe I can't be in the classroom from 8 to 3, or I have a health issue that, prevents me from from needing makes me need accommodations that are not available. Those kind of kids, an online school is a great option.
Yeah, I mean, the obstacle isn't the classroom itself, like, they'd be fine in a classroom, they just can't be in a classroom for whatever
Right.
reason, is it are they training? Do they have health issues and lots of doctor's appointments? Those kinds of things where, a well-run program like the Florida Virtual School, it's not a compromise, it's actually what they need, it's the right solution, it's the right tool for their problem that they have.
Right, exactly, which is important because most of what we're trying to get on this show is talking about kids for whom the structure of the school itself is the problem. So it's not their schedule or their location or whatever, it's that the actual way that school has been designed, as we talked about way back in the 19th century, and that it's in this kind of rigid, like scaled up version, that's the issue that's not helping them learn. So online school solves the problem of kids for whom schedule and location is the big issue. It doesn't solve the problem of the way in which this traditional school structure does not accommodate lots of different types of learners.
Right, so if the kid already knows how to learn in that kind of traditional way, if you will,
Mhm.
I mean, and really just for whatever reason, they can't be in the building, they can't have the really rigid schedule, like, honestly, it sounds like a good solution.
Yeah.
It might be what they need.
Exactly, exactly. So the other option is homeschooling. That's kind of the other default, and that solves a different problem than online schooling does, right?
Yeah, exactly. So online schooling keeps the curriculum, it removes the building, right? And then what homeschooling actually does is that it can rebuild a curriculum around the kid or, thinking about instructional pace and content and format. Is it experiential learning? Is it more abstract? Do they use books? Do they go to the library? What do they do? How do they do it? In instructional design terms, it's the difference between adjusting delivery and, basically redesigning the instruction built around one kid, and homeschooling really is built around the kid that's having
Right.
homeschooling. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're moving the instruction into your home, like, you can change a lot more than
Yeah.
if you're just trying to serve, and obviously it's just your family really that's, like, trying to provide the education, so it's just one-on-one. You can personalize a lot more, but it asks a lot more of the parent, right? So that you have to have the time to do it, you have to understand the material, or have resources to find someone who does understand the material, especially when you get to high school. I mean,
Mhm.
when
Yeah.
you look at a traditional high school, you've got a different teacher for math and a different teacher for history and a different teacher for English and a different teacher for foreign language. Like, we're asking that parent, essentially, if you think about the traditional concept of homeschooling, to be all of those teachers at once plus everything else. So, and then on top of all that, you have to have kind of the time and resources to build a structure every single day. Like, if you're a working parent,
Mhm.
how are you going to, like, basically hold school for your kid all day instead of, sending your kid off to school? So,
Well, and realistically, it's usually the mom. I mean, like,
yeah,
that's the reality of all this. The
absolutely.
mom who's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, I've spent a lot of my career watching what happens when you ask one person to be all of these things, to be the
Mhm.
curriculum designer and the teacher, and to grade and evaluate everything for a single student all at once. I mean, it can work, actually. It can work really well, and some of the most individualized instruction that I've ever seen happen in a home, right? Where one parent, and again, normally the mother, but when the father gets involved and is, really active in homeschooling, it's a really cool thing to see because you see the way that both parents can engage
Contribute.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and really like show their passion to their kid and get their kid inspired and involved with everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really, really cool. But like you're saying, it's an enormous amount of work and expertise to ask of 1 or 2 people, especially like you're saying, like once you get past middle school and it
Mhm.
starts to get really specialized and the kid starts to have really specific interests and it starts to get really high level really, really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that basically is what we see, like, in the data, is that homeschooling correlates heavily with whether a parent's income or schedule even allows for it in the first place. So when it works, the parent essentially becomes like a personalized system for a struggling kid, like not even just a personalized teacher, but like the whole, system around education, right? But
Mhm.
when it doesn't work, it's usually that the parents don't have the time or the money or the expertise to be all of these things at once. It's a super heavy lift for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, I mean, also there's a research question underneath that, kinda gets flattened a little bit with this all this debate about socialization and, are homeschooled kids isolated, and what does this mean,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. And it's not really does homeschooling cause social outcomes, it's really whether a family is intentional about replacing what the kid is gonna get from a classroom socially. So, having friends, seeing them around, learning how to navigate conflict, all this stuff. And the studies that find strong social and emotional development in homeschooled kids, they're looking at families that build co-ops or the kids are really involved in sports or group projects. And, these are things that are scheduled into the week. And they're very, very intentional. And that even adds to the amount of work that the parents are doing because it's not just the instruction, it's figuring out all this other stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. School isn't just about the content that you get. It's about all these other things that you mentioned, like the social interaction and everything. So the risk is not homeschooling itself.
Mm-mm, no.
Yeah, it's the fact that homeschooling without anything in place to provide all those other things that kids are getting both in the classroom and outside of the classroom at school, like when they're having lunch together or in sports or like in clubs or whatever those things are. So it's I think a lot of times we think of homeschooling as like, "Oh, we just have to make sure that they get the content." Like, I just
Yeah.
need to make sure that they get that. But there's so much else that's being provided in a school that you also have to think about intentionally bringing to your kids' education in their school day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the design, right? And I think that's also why a lot of parents really like the idea of co-ops or they like the idea of sort of, sharing some of the homeschooling responsibility. But again, it ends up being a lot more work.
Right, exactly. So, is there, like, maybe, like, a little bit of a selection effect there? Like, the families who choose homeschooling and stick with it are the ones who just have more resources and more involvement to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The motivated and resourced families tend to produce good outcomes in any setting. And
Yeah.
what the research does tell us is that homeschooling itself isn't the risk factor people assume it is in terms
Mm.
of, level of education or social outcomes or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but whether any given family has what it takes to do it well is a very different question. And that's the question that matters.
Yeah, so if we think about that, like, who does homeschooling actually work for? Like, what kid is homeschooling a great fit for in the same way that we talked about what kid is a great fit for online schools?
Well, so the family, because you're not just talking about the kid with homeschooling,
Yeah.
right? Like you're talking about the family. So the family that you're talking about actually has bandwidth,
Yeah.
hours in the week, um, to focus on this and not just the good intentions
Mhm.
of saying, oh well, my kid will absorb it and they'll have a lot more fun and whatever. No, like they need
Yeah.
to have the time, they need to put in the effort. The parent really needs to know the subject, or have the time to learn about it alongside their
Mm.
kid. And they need to be really, really deliberate about the social side. Make sure the kid gets, the same kind of sports, interpersonal stuff. And you can't leave it to chance because if you leave it to chance, it's just not going to happen. So that's
Yeah.
kind of on the family side.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And for the kid, a kid who really would benefit intensely from that kind of individual attention, like some kids really thrive if
Hmm.
there's like, one person who's really like guiding everything around them specifically, like at a level of personalization that no, traditional school is going to be able to match. There's just not anyway with the number of students.
Right, and the other piece of it too is that, like, it might fit a particular family or a particular kid in a particular season, a particular time of life, not necessarily forever.
Mm,
It could just be for with a parent who could be home for a couple of years while the kid works through something specific, and then the kid sometimes the kids themselves, they're the ones who say, "No, I wanna go back to school, I wanna be friends
yeah.
with people, I don't wanna do this anymore." And that's also a decision that I think, like, the family kinda ends up making as a unit one way or the other.
Right, right, right. So, yeah, so choosing homeschool doesn't have to be like a lifetime decision. So, for families that have the bandwidth and are able to like build all that structure and find all the things that they need to replace, that can be a great option for those families. But those families might be maybe few and far between. I know that I certainly could not have done it if that was a choice that I was making. So the actual trade-off, right, that we just laid out was that online school, even its best, mostly keeps the structure, doesn't have the same kind of personalization. Homeschooling gives you that personalization, but also asks the parent to build the entire structure themselves. So we should talk a little bit now about what we have built in the gap, which is called college on ramps, which we've mentioned before on this show. But the specifics matter like a lot more than the theory of our project. So
Yeah, let's do it. And I just want to add, by the way, before we get into it, I don't think I could do homeschooling either. I mean,
right, it's like
knowing how much work it is, knowing all that, it's a lot.
absolutely. It's I mean, I really feel like it kind of needs to become your whole life if it's gonna be done right, like it's really a full-time job for sure.
Oh,
And maybe even
absolutely.
more than a full-time job. Maybe a full-time job and a half.
Yeah, yeah. On top of everything else in life.
Totally, totally.
Yeah. Okay,
So
let's do
there's
it.
yes, let's do it. So there's 2 pieces to college on-ramps. The first is that the pace and the content genuinely adjust to the student the way homeschooling can. So and that's built into our platform and the way that student is engaging with our, AI-assisted platform. It's going to speed up or slow down based on what that student is interested in and what they're doing, how well they're grasping the concepts and things like that. So that's built into the system and not it doesn't depend on a parent or some other person to, like, do that design session by session and make sure that it's paced properly. The pacing will always be adjusted, exactly to where the kid is learning.
So a parent doesn't need the subject expertise or the time or the just all the work to build a curriculum from scratch.
Right, exactly. That part's already built and already set to adjust to the student. So, and then the second piece is the twice weekly mentor coaching. So we have coaches that meet twice weekly with students, and that's sort of the part that, like with the Florida Virtual School, they have teachers who students can meet with like on a regular basis if they want to, but at college on-ramps, these are mentors, so they're not just there to talk about that one particular subject matter, and it's also, required that the student meet
Mm,
with these mentors twice a week,
mm.
and so instead of the onus being on the student to go and be like, "Ah, I didn't really understand this," or whatever, the student is going to be at college on-ramps asked twice weekly, like, "Are you on top of your homework? Are you having trouble with anything?" In addition to, like, any kind of personal issues they might be having with, trying to manage their time or fitting school in or whatever it might be, the coach is going to be there to help them work through that set. So it's kind of helpful to have if you're taking a sort of more non-traditional path that we might traditionally think of as being kind of isolating, to have somebody outside the family relationship who's checking in specifically and is another kind of authority figure, mentor figure for the kid to figure out, like, what does the student need to be successful?
So, I just, I've built the program with you. Like, I'm totally on board, but I just want to make sure that we're not building a case for our own program just up as a comparison, because that would be a little too much,
Yeah.
and that would be a little extra. So, like, really, is there a real case where families should still choose to homeschool or choose a program like the Florida Virtual School over something like College on Ramps?
Yeah. Definitely. College on ramps is not for every kid. If the parent has the resources or the family really has the resources for homeschooling, that could be a good option. And if they really want to personalize the child's instruction in a very specific way, if your kid really wants to like get into marine biology or something like, and that's like kind of all you want to focus on, and you have the means and the resources and whatever to do that, then that is a great option. um and if a family just needs like a recognized well-known like well-resourced alternative to the building without wanting to, like, rethink the whole, structure of the way the kids learn, then a program like an online school could be exactly right. Yeah.
So really, like, what we're talking about with college on-ramps is for the family in between those 2.
Exactly. So it's for the parent who doesn't have the bandwidth to build curriculum from scratch, but who really has a kid who maybe could benefit from that type of personalization that leads a kid through things at the pace that they need, um, and would benefit from that kind of flexibility in learning that's, like, more personalized and not gonna force them into, like, a very traditional pathway. So that's the specific gap that College On-Ramps fills. We're excited about it. So online school, homeschool, that was never really kind of the right question on its own. The question is, what does your kid actually need and which path gets them closer to that success?
And if neither one quite gets you there, that matters too, and it matters in
Exactly.
terms of how you make this decision.
Absolutely. So, if any of this sounds interesting, you can find us at collegeonramps.org. And if you're in the middle of this exact decision right now, this is a good one to send to whoever you are deciding with. So, next time, we're heading back into the science of learning strand, the testing effect, why one practice test can beat hours of rereading, even when the rereading feels like it's working better. That's what we're going to talk about next time on High School Wasn't Built for Every Kid. Thanks. We're out.